Hey everybody, how you doing? I just wanted to stop in, say hi. It's been a while. I set it up so it would live stream on YouTube. I'll stop playing here in a minute. I'm very sorry for everything everybody's going to. I don't really have any words. I haven't done one of these in a while because, it was enough to process the Trump election, whatever you want to call that debacle, the holidays, New Orleans, and now the wildfires. I know it might feel like it's more than you can bear at times, but it's not. We can get through this together. This is my trusty PRS. Hopefully you guys can hear that. I got a few of these. This is a super nice custom one. I got that a while back, and I was not obsessed, but I'm a big Carlos Santana fan, and he plays them, and I worked for a band that had the same publicist, and so I got to meet Carlos a few times, and they hooked me up with the company that makes those, PRS. But I don't know why I'm thinking of this story, but I've told it before, it seems appropriate now, but I was doing the Latin Grammys a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago or so, with my friend Jose Feliciano and his beautiful family, and we were, he was out there to perform, and I was working with him all week, and we were sitting at lunch, and Carlos Santana came by our table. They're old friends, obviously, and Carlos came by. He was like, one of my heroes. I'm like, in awe, and I had a moment to talk to him, and I talked to him about this thing. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I'd heard him give a quote once about a friend who had killed himself, and he said, the guy was drowning in a glass of water. He couldn't see the big picture, which is some sort of kind of a Latin saying that I'm butchering, but I got the point, and I told him, I said, it meant so much to me when I heard you say that, it really resonated, and he could see I was sort of like, always seeking spiritual things. I'm in recovery, right? So anything that's going to make me feel better, being in my skin, like, I'm always reaching for. And he goes, come here, man, come here. He's like, you want to know the secret to life? And he had me stand up and go around the table and look into his eyes. And he's got these really super soulful eyes. And he goes, look into my eyes. And I look into his eyes, and he goes, you want to hear the meaning of life? You want to know what the meaning of life is? He goes, my life has meaning, your life has meaning, and the universe has a purpose. And he said it again. He said, my life has meaning, your life has meaning. And he put his hand on my chest, and the universe has a purpose. He goes, that's it. And those words have comforted me through the years, right? Because I felt it when he was saying it to me. I knew exactly what he meant, and a lot of times we can feel insignificant, right? And then hardship happens, and you're like, how does anything matter if everything can just blow away and burn away and wash away, and all the catastrophe that we've witnessed in the last year? How do we, wrest meaning out of that when it just seems all so tragic and overwhelming? And you have to always reach back to the fact that there's a reason we're here. There's a reason we're going through this. We're sort of bearing witness to all this catastrophe so we can kind of carry on and become stronger as people somehow and rise to the occasion, right? Because the earth needs us. If the universe has purpose, we're misusing the universe, right? We're abusing the universe through climate change, through this just massive, destruction of the planet that's being pushed by the same people that are pushing fascism on us, right? By the same people that are behind Donald Trump, that are behind Elon Musk. Well, he's kind of in it for himself, but these same bad actors are all over the world, and they're pulling strings and they're manipulating elections and they're doing all sorts of bad stuff in the hopes that they can control things, that they can continue to plunder this planet for profit, that they can just pump oil, like there's no tomorrow. I'm not saying you got to give up cars tomorrow. Obviously, the world stops working if you do that, but you got to reach towards an alternative, to this insanity. You can't pretend like it doesn't exist. And a guy just ran for president in the United States, the largest consumer and producer of fossil fuels, or not the largest producer, but a large producer, just ran for president on Drill Baby Drill in 2025. While he was running, entire towns were washed away in western North Carolina, right? And in Florida and in Tennessee and all these other places. Unheard of, biblical destruction. A listener to this podcast I've never heard from again. She was in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And the T-shirt she ordered got sent back to me. And I emailed her. I've never heard from her again. She might have been lost in that storm. And I can't. I've lost count of how many people I know who've just lost everything, or friends of friends that have lost everything in L.A. in a matter of a week. This time a week ago, everyone had their houses and their guitars and their pets and their memories and their property, and their lives. And these children had their lives. And it's all, burnt up in a week. And I can't imagine what they're going through. And I'm not going to speak to that a lot because it's not my place. There's better people to speak on what's going on in L.A. than some dude in the Hudson Valley, right? But I have a lot of connections to that area, and everybody I know in the business is out there, and pretty much every paycheck I've ever gotten is sent from LA. My business manager, everybody, I work in an industry where that's where it's based, and the industry isn't all stars, who've lost mansions. And there's a lot of that too. And I know a lot of some of those people, and that's heartbreaking too. Movie stars have feelings. They're human beings. It sucks when their house burns down too. There's been a lot of stuff online, like people attacking them, and it's just rich people, as if that matters. There's rich people who do good work. I've done benefits in the Pacific Palisades in a massive mansion overlooking the Pacific. We did one with Jackson Brown for like Barbara Boxer or somebody. These were very liberal, good-hearted people who were using their position to help others and help progressive causes. So when people immediately turn and don't show empathy because it might be a wealthy area, that's ridiculous. And it's also, a limited understanding of LA and the entertainment business and stuff, because most people are middle class, and even the people you think of as like famous aren't as rich as you think you are or they are, so I know that's probably not anybody who listens to this podcast, but there has been a lot of that going down, and it's heartbreaking because people are suffering and they're losing it all, and it's techs, it's it's managers, it's sidemen, musicians and producers and mixers and caterers and accountants and prop guys and hair and makeup, you name it. It's an industry town, and people worked really hard to get what they have, and they're trying to struggle in a place that's very expensive to live, and they're raising kids and they're going to schools, and it's all burnt up. It's all gone up in smoke. And on top of that, the guy who's going to get who got elected, who's going to take office a week from today, is the Drill Baby Drill guy, and the Speaker of the House just said he's going to withhold funds or possibly attach strings to disaster relief for California, which is absolutely insane, which is evil. It's pure evil that little jockey-looking MFer, that little suck-up pissant of a human being is going to say something like that tonight, where people are about to endure another night of winds and these fires perhaps getting out of control again. They're already out of control by definition, right? But it could get worse when they're finally making some inroads towards containment. And you got the Speaker of the House saying we might not, really hook you up with what at any other time in our American history, they would just cut a big fat check, and take care of the situation. Now you're going to have to give Donald Trump a piece of the action to rebuild, right? Or that's how they're going to try to make it. We're not going to let that happen, I promise you, but that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to let him get a piece of the construction cost, of the rebuilding cost, because he's a mobster, and that's what mobsters do, right? You got to pay the vig, and that's what he wants, right? So the fact that that's how Congress is operating ahead of his inauguration, like, yeah, there's going to be some strings attached, and that they immediately use the situation to attack Governor Newsom and attack the Democrats and all this, BS, like trying to blame somebody. You want to blame somebody, blame the oil companies, blame ExxonMobil, blame a party that's so idiotic it doesn't want to admit climate change exists. Blame a country that buys giant pickup trucks and SUVs like it's, just like it's 1955 or something, and gas is 5 cents a gallon and does no harm. Go to Europe, go to Australia, see what kind of cars they're driving. They're sensible. They're driving smaller cars. Ours get bigger by the minute, and nobody wants to admit there's a problem, and everyone wants to look for somebody to blame in a disaster, because the Republicans don't want you to understand that climate change is real. And they don't want the people who vote for them to come out of their ignorance and understand that it's real. That's what this is really about. That's what MAGA is about. That's what fascism is about. That's what whatever kind of thing we have going on in the country now with, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all these dorks, these tech bros that are into UFC now and, eschewing or, rather embracing all of this like toxic masculinity. Well, it's insane. Zuckerberg, I saw a clip on Joe Rogan of him talking about like corporations aren't masculine enough. Dude, what the hell are you talking about? You're as soft as they come. You went to Harvard. You look like a freaking poodle. But now he's a tough guy. Now he's embracing Trump and all this stuff, right? Because it works so well, that branding that I talked about on this podcast, that toxic masculinity, appealing to dumb jocks, that militarized patriotism that sort of cropped up after 9/11 and we didn't really keep an eye on, and it metastasized into whatever bullshit is happening now in this country, where people are at war with each other, where people can watch a city burn, the most beloved city, or not the most, but one of them, right? It's LA, man. How much is LA given the world? How much entertainment and films and music, People, like, they've created dreams and inspiration and all kinds of stuff, and they get immediately attacked, by some fat slob in Palm Beach sitting on his golf course. No empathy, no help, no, hey, we'll figure out if there's something we can change, later on, but now's not the time for politics. Let's get these fires out and get people a place to live. There's no talk of that. There's no empathy. Trump doesn't have empathy. His kids don't show up in disasters. In 9/11, after 9/11, they weren't handing out water bottles like every other New Yorker, or most of us, and trying to help each other and walking around. He was talking about himself immediately when it happened. And that's what he did this time. He said, look at the mess Joe Biden has left me. Me. Anybody who says me in the face of a disaster like that should never be your president, obviously. And that's what you got. You got a self-centered, psychotic man running this country again, right? And he's more powerful than he's ever been because he somehow bullshitted people into thinking that he was a better choice than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It's absolutely insane, but it's a machine, right? It's a machine of misogyny and toxic masculinity and all this stuff that's trying to get people to turn against their own human nature, to reject empathy. The idiots who listen to Joe Rogan, who's listening to that sawed-off little meat knuckle, right? Interviewing, what's his name, that Australian actor, Mel Gibson. That guy's an asshole. He's an anti-Semitic, alcoholic douchebag. A friend of mine's married to his daughter. Like, that guy's a whack job. There's nobody in L.A. who doesn't know. Mel Gibson is pure trash and out of his mind. And what happens? Joe Rogan has him on his podcast from Austin, while a city that made Joe Rogan famous is burning. Joe Rogan got famous making people eat bugs on a TV show and doing shows for toxic douchebags at the Comedy Store, right? And now he's got a whole brand of comedy that's popular with dickheads. Can I curse on YouTube? I'm live now. But you know what I mean? But that mentality is a weaponization of like of a personality, right? It's becoming this archetype of a personality. The like, I don't feel any sympathy. I'm a tough guy. The anti-immigrant, xenophobia, the people who applaud Elon Musk, the people who suck up to Donald Trump, the Jeff Bezoses, what the hell's wrong with that guy? Like sucking up to him. That guy has a yacht so big, they have to park it in the port of the Everglades in Florida, where I'm heading in the morning, by the way. But think about that. His mega yacht is so big, he has to park it where the cruise ships are because it won't fit in a normal marina in the causeway. That's insane. That's how grotesque this wealth is. The top 3 richest guys in the world are Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, according to something I just saw this afternoon from Robert Reich. I hadn't independently verified it, but it's probably pretty close to accurate. And you're talking $400 billion, $200 billion. You're talking these insane sums of money where you could just write a check right now and take care of a lot of the suffering that's happening in LA. Are they doing that? No. They're trolling people. They're trying to make people feel bad. They're trying to score political points. Right? To fellow Americans. They're using tragedy for their own gain. That's like the lowest of the low. I'm not surprised that Trump's doing it because I know the guy and he's always been a scumbag. I am surprised that all these tech billionaires are piling on and people are still using their products. Don't buy a Tesla. Don't buy any of this crap that Elon Musk is selling. Don't use Facebook. Don't use IG. I opened my accounts again today if people want to put information on there for relief efforts, GoFundMes for your buddies who lost everything. Have at it. I opened up my comments, put all that kind of stuff all day long on there, but don't look to there for like me to entertain you or just use it like it's normal times. It's not. You don't want to use their products, okay? You might think, what's the alternative? I don't know. We better find one. That's what I write about on Substack. That's what I bitched about on this podcast. I said, this isn't working. All these people that are grifting you to fight back and drop a hashtag and drop a heart if you love Democrats and all this and send us money and we'll help. That was all bullshit and it didn't work. If it worked, we'd be inaugurating Kamala Harris on Monday and we're not. Okay. You were in a silo. It felt like we were making a difference, but nobody was making a difference because you were doing it on their platform. You were putting all your eggs in one basket, and the basket had a hole in it because it was owned by a fascist who would rather plunder the earth for its resources, who would help a guy like Donald Trump get elected so he can go after Greenland, to get the lithium deposits and the natural gas under the Arctic shelf. Same reason they're going after Canada, which is mind-boggling. Part of the reason I haven't done a podcast is I don't even want to address issues like that. They're so stupid and beneath us as human beings. Like Canada, I don't know if it's true, but I heard that a representative from Canada was down at Mar-a-Lago from Alberta or somebody, like a minister was down at Mar-a-Lago meeting with Trump and said you can basically assume there's going to be a 25% tariff on the crude, on oil that's coming out of Canada when he takes office, which is insane. You're going to start a trade war with Canada, the country that's fought alongside us in every freaking war we've ever been in, the country of smart, funny, polite people that give us great music and great comedy, you guys know how I feel about Canada, okay? For the tragically hip alone, you say thank you. Thank you for giving us that. Thank you for Gord Downey. It's insane. I can't even fathom it, That's how dumb Donald Trump is. He's picking a fight with Canada. He's messing with Canada. And that's for the resources, right? It's this smoke and mirrors. It's like, here, look at this crazy thing I said. But underneath it, there's real tactical things. Trailer Park Boys are good buddies of mine. Some of you guys may know who those guys are. And, they know it's not a joke. Mike Smith is Bubbles. He's a good friend of mine. He's over in London in the UK now. They have a new movie coming out, by the way. You should check it out. You can find it wherever. I was in the scene I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's a big finale kind of scene at Abbey Road in Studio 2 where the Beatles recorded, and I'm in that scene. So if you watch the movie, it's called Bubbles and the Shit Rockers. But it's very cool. Billy Bob Thornton is in it. Ron Wood is in it. Very cool. But I digress, right? But I was talking to Mike about this, and he was like, this guy's not joking. He's serious about it. He says it's like a joke. He says it like a joke because he's testing the waters. They're like trial balloons. But he's going to try to mess with Canada. I'm not saying he's going to attack Canada, but he's going to try to get, a Pierre Pulliver or somebody in there that he can cut a deal with. I don't know what that looks like because it's so out of left field and bizarre, but that's the plan, and it's for the resources. It's for controlling things because they're trying to divide up the world. What they want is a multipolar world. That's what Putin wants. He wants to have power. He wants the United States, China, Iran, whatever, Israel will have some role in this, Saudi Arabia, he wants to sort of divide it up into these like powerful countries, but no big democratic superpower anymore. No United States as it used to be, where we're supporting NATO and we're protecting democracy and we're sort of, the good guys trying to make sure, things don't spit out of control. They want an oligarchy, right? They want like a theocracy because that's the easiest thing, right? So you got that in, Iran and places with extreme kind of views, and that's what they're trying to set up here, like a Christo-fascist, expansionist country where white, mediocre Christian males, do all of the deciding, like, Mike Johnson and all these idiots, the J.D. Vance, these kind of idiots, right? And all the people that follow them. And they want to sort of control the internal country, have power and sway over women, over minorities, and then they want a world in which they can do business with the other bad guys and everybody gets a cut and everybody gets a piece. A bunch of oligarchs. Kakistocracy. People always correct whatever. There's a bunch of terms for it. Let's just simplify it. It's fucked up. And you can see what it looks like if you look at Russia, if you look at Hungary. Paul Manafort is back on the scene. There's an article in the Times yesterday. Manafort is open for business again. He's trying to do business in Ukraine, where he got in trouble for supporting Yanukovych. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong too, but the guy who was Putin's puppet, who was in there before Zelensky. He was in there because Paul Manafort effectively advocated on his behalf for the Russians. That's what he got in trouble for, and for colluding with the Russians in the 2016 campaign, and he got sentenced to prison, like 7 years, and Trump let him out and pardoned him, and now he's back in business, and he's going to work for Marine Le Pen in France, the fascist daughter of a Nazi, a French Nazi sympathizer, fascist guy, and they're getting backed by a billionaire in France. So you should read this article. It was in the Times yesterday, and think about that. Think about other billionaires besides Elon Musk funding dudes like Paul Manafort, who said, like in his pitch letter, like, I'll help, micro-target areas and pick out particular, constituents and then turn on your opponents and create scandals and all this kind of stuff. And that's what they do. That's the playbook that worked for Trump. They make something up out of thin air, like the Hunter Biden stuff or Biden Burisma and all this crazy shit, which is what Trump got impeached for the first time, trying to shake down Zelensky to find dirt on Biden. There was no dirt on Biden. He'd been in D.C. for 50 years. All of his dirt came because he started slipping up as an old man. That's his dirt is recent. It's not he was running some crime syndicate for 50 years under the nose of everybody else. You don't think President Obama vetted Joe Biden before he asked him? So there was no dirt, but it didn't matter because the assertions are repeated by Fox News and all of these idiots, and then Joe Lunchbucket hears it and repeats it to his buddy. So people who are not that well informed hear the news, they hear about political candidates, and people think, who are you going to vote for? Well, I can't vote for Biden because he's got a crime family, and Trump loves America, and he took a bullet for democracy. We've all seen the picture, even though that was fake and, theatrically produced, and people did die, but Trump wasn't in any danger, I promise you that. And that was the most least scrutinized assassination attempt, 2 of them in the history of the United States, and somehow we weren't allowed to see any medical reports or no hospital thing. Like, don't get me started, but it was a stunt. It was theater, and it worked. Right? Because we live in a world where people have, tiny attention spans, and they get their news on YouTube. Don't get your news on YouTube. I know there's people like disagreeing with me watching that, watch this if you want to hear a guy talk shit and give you his opinions. That's what YouTube is. This is not the place for news. Anybody who's telling you their news on YouTube is not news. They're reading something in the paper and repeating it to you. And it doesn't matter if they say breaking or whatever. It's not their reporting. They didn't go to journalism school. They don't have an ombudsman. They don't have an editor. They don't have a staff of researchers. They don't have lawyers. They don't have fact checkers. And you want fact checkers, okay? We're losing that, and you don't want to lose truth, okay? That's the most valuable commodity we have in a democracy, is everybody's ability to understand and accept a common set of facts. When you don't have that anymore, you have what we have now, which is chaos. You have a natural disaster, and you have idiots who can pump misinformation and disinformation into that, environment for political gain. They can start rumors, and before you can do anything about it, people believe it. That was Trump's MO and his playbook, in the North Carolina floods from the hurricane earlier this year. And that's immediately what he did in LA, because it worked. And if you don't have a common set of facts, people fall for that. They buy the bullshit. You have to have established facts. And I'm not dissing this new sort of information attention economy. I appreciate you listening to me, and I'm glad you're listening to other people. But don't kid yourself about what we're losing by not being able to trust the media. And I'm not saying that the New York Times and the Washington Post are doing a bang-up job. They're not. They're fucking up big time. They screwed us over so bad. You don't even get it. From 2016 on, they talked about Hillary's emails, and they ignored Donald Trump, a dude who lived in that city and was a sexual predator, for decades. You would have to live under a rock in certain circles to not know who Donald Trump was. Okay. It was pretty obvious. And yes, I worked on a show with him. And yes, everything was true that I said. He is addicted to Adderall. He is a sexual predator. He does say the N-word, out loud, like a real racist, because he is a racist, and he is an anti-Semite, and he's an addict, which that's probably like the thing I blame him for the least, because like his malignancy is such that like he's beyond human help, as they say in the program, right? You want a higher power to come in and help you. Trump is like beyond any hope. I've never seen more of a psychopath, and I think when all is said and done, he will be the most corrosive, destructive force this country has ever seen. And I don't think most people realize the danger we're in. We can fight back in a way, and we have to stay vigilant, but we have to keep fighting for our own reality, our own grasp on what's going on here, because if we sort of sleep on any of this, we're screwed. You think about what Elon Musk is doing, right? He's calling everybody in the UK a predator, Keir Starmer and all these MPs. He's like, that guy's funding rape gangs and stuff. Like, what are you talking about? He's exploiting crazy stuff. Go look at his Twitter feed. It's insane. You're like, this guy needs a wellness check. This guy needs to be locked up. The fact that he's the richest dude in the world, and that's what he's obsessed with, and that he's a guy, who hung out with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, when one of his 10 wives or whatever, like the lady he married twice and had a kid with, the British actress, he was hanging with Epstein and her. He hangs with Trump, who is a predator, who groomed a friend of mine when she was 12 years old and taken lessons at his rink in Central Park. She called him his dirty uncle. She ended up in Epstein's house with that guy and Jeffrey and said, no, you wouldn't believe what those men did to women and girls in that place. And she was 17 when that happened. And she's not alone. There's dozens of women like her in New York City. And the New York Times could have figured that out, but they didn't want to. Right? Because there was money in Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is representing sort of the powers that be in a way. And now they're all in on him because now they saw that the guardrails of democracy have been pushed away. Right? That the Democrats aren't really good at fighting back, and that this new attention economy and the Elon Musks, they're all too powerful. So instead of standing up to them, they're like, well, we might as well join them. We might as well get a piece of the action. And that's what they're trying to do. But with that piece of the action goes your free press. because that's the first thing the dictators come after. And that's what you need to look out for, because when Trump takes office, he's going to start going after people. He said he'd go after influencers. That's insane. You're going after people who are just talking online. He sued ABC and they bent the knee to him because they're corporations. And it's a local story is the other thing. In terms of media, New York's a small town, right? Fox News is across the street from MSNBC. New York Times is just down the street. Everybody's hanging in the Hamptons in the summer. Everyone's playing golf at Atlantic and Maidstone and stuff. They all know who Trump is. All the banks, all the real estate developers, and all the media execs. And they all kind of held their nose in 2016 and thought it'd be cute, but they'd get, a tax break out of it or something. So they kind of didn't speak up. But then he got elected, and we saw what he did. 1 million Americans died because of his mishandling and bungling of the COVID epidemic, because all he thought about was himself. We know that from what he said to Bob Woodward on the tapes. He knew in January this was a deadly disease, and he didn't say anything. And by March, the whole world shut down, and the economy tanked, right? And we stopped manufacturing stuff around the world. So there was a global, supply and demand issues, and it caused inflation. And when we came out of that, we built back a strong economy, But you still had inflation. You still had high prices. And Trump was able to simplify the messaging. Like, this is Biden's fault, what you were paying for a gallon of gas, what you were paying for eggs. And then he was able to superimpose upon that all this crazy talk and all the kind of knee-jerk dumbassery of let's go Brandon and, fuck Biden and all these flags that you would see everywhere. I'm an hour outside of the city and I see that stuff. My neighbor put up a Gadsden flag the day after he got elected. Like, what's wrong with these people, man? We didn't used to do that. We used to be Americans. We were under one flag, and we had a lot of friends around the world. We didn't attack, our allies, as Elon Musk is doing. Back to my point. He's attacking Europe because he can see that if he gets away with that, if he gets away with getting the AfD in office in Germany, he's got carte blanche to do whatever he wants, to drill, to mine for lithium, to put his Starlink satellites everywhere. You can barely see the night sky. Obviously you walk out in the country, you can still see a lot of stars, right? But astronomers, because they're low in orbit, they block out like the stars. So astronomers are already complaining that there's so many of those satellites up there that they can't even do their work. He's putting up as many satellites as like China is. One man is sort of polluting the galaxy. That's insane. It's insane that somebody has that much wealth and can do that. And if he was even kind of a good guy, it would be insane. The fact that he's a Bond villain, the fact that you just know there's nothing right about that dude whatsoever, and he's just doing this stuff. He had a Twitter, whatever you call it, Spaces thing with one of the fire chiefs in the Palisades fire yesterday. What the hell gives Elon Musk the right to have his own private briefing and put this guy on the internet? Nobody elected Elon Musk. He's not an official, right? But because he's the world's richest guy, everyone's just opening the doors and letting him go wherever he wants. Be prepared to see him sitting next to Trump on the steps of the Capitol next week. Get ready for it, Get ready for him in the skybox at the Super Bowl and all this kind of broing out. And everybody's going to get outraged and everybody's going to talk about it. But you got to keep your eye on the prize. You got to think about what's their end game. He's not doing it because he wants to hang out with Donald Trump. Like, trust me, nobody really wants to hang out with Donald Trump. His kids don't want to hang out with Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't want to hang out with Donald Trump, But they want the benefits. They want this sort of, this thing that's working, this brand. And what I fear is happening now is that Trump is sort of the figurehead of a global movement, right? That Elon Musk is going all in Great Britain, in Germany. You already have Hungary. You have all these other countries. God knows what's going to happen to Ukraine. They've been fighting bravely, coming up 3 years next month, right? And now they're going to have to cut a deal because Trump is going to pull funding. Right? That's insane, right? But think about that. They get all these bad actors around the world, and this sort of MAGA branded, dumbass Trumpism thing is sort of what everybody adheres to, their set of facts, that everybody's a pedophile, criminal gang, supporting politician if they're a Democrat, and they want to let immigrants come into your country and, and rape your kids and steal your jobs and all this kind of just awful, awful rhetoric. Any one of those countries I've gone to, any European country, I see as many immigrants as I do people from there, and there is much, I think of like them as Brits, as Germans, as wherever that country is. Like, I'm not expecting to just see some like white European looking dude, and I'm treating everybody I meet as a citizen of that country, because that's what countries look like. That's what the world looks like. That's the good news, is we're in places where people can mix together and live together. What makes you a country is caring for your fellow man. And that's what they're not doing. That's what they're showing they're incapable of doing in LA right now. It doesn't matter what somebody's nationality is. If they're not going to fill up a bucket of water and help you put out a fire, they're not your friend. They're not your brothers. And that's what the GOP is doing. They're showing you who they are. They're not Americans. They're not patriots. Trump doesn't care about this country. He wants to destroy it. You hire Trump when you want to break things. That's what he's good for. That's what the mob would hire him for, to launder money, and screw up businesses, because they make money anyway. You just want a place to like park your losses. That's what Trump is. He's incompetent at every level. And we're paying a price. He's degraded the United States to a point I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I never thought I would be, talking on YouTube about Trump threatening Canada. Like, that's just insane. Or Greenland, which has already been a victim of colonialism. The Inuits, native people, are from there. That's the original inhabitants. And then they were colonized by Denmark. And, it's Denmark's situation. It's not the U.S. Like, it's not us to buy them. They're not for sale, is my point. They have the same history as many nations do around this country, and many indigenous people do. They've been sort of colonized and forced, into this form of government, or the form of being a property essentially of another country. And now they're like on the chopping block. Like, Donald Trump is going to buy them, and Don Jr. is going there. Like, what are you talking about? What are we talking about? And this guy's not even in office yet. This is a week into it. And he's reacting like this. He's hurting Americans. Like, spitting in our faces. That's what it is. I got to pick up my guitar because I'm getting too pissed. Sorry. I don't want to keep you guys long, man. I just, it's a lot to handle. It's hard to watch this. It's hard to watch people lose their homes and all their possessions. It's hard to watch trees burn. Those trees are homes to all kinds of other creatures that are living in the trees and around them, birds and butterflies and bobcats and all kinds of stuff, man. It's just, it's hellacious. And you should be doing all you can to help as a human being. And we have a leader who doesn't care at all, who just wants to make it worse for his own gain. All they're seeing in this situation is a way to sort of kneecap Governor Newsom because they're scared about him in 2028 running, and Trump would give his left nut to have hair like Gavin Newsom. Are you kidding me? Trump looks at that guy, and I guarantee you that's all he thinks about. Oh, man, I'd love to have that fucking hair, boy. If I could just have that hair for one day. Trump's jealous. He's jealous. He's insecure. That's what he is. He's character defects. That's what addiction is. You're run by character defects. You think you're worthless. And Trump has always thought he's worthless because he's always been like illiterate. He can't read. He's probably dyslexic, and his family didn't diagnose it. There's no shame in being dyslexic. You get help, and you learn some coping mechanisms, and you do the best you can. But that's not how Trump and his family roll, right? They see that as a defect, so they hide it from the world. So you hide his grades, and you get lawyers to, sue the schools if they ever tell you what his grades really are and all this kind of stuff. His whole life has been a cover-up. They've been covering up his incompetency. and his malignancies and his predation and his addiction. And now you got like the whole world going in on helping him get away with it. You got billionaires. I got your back, big guy. Because they all know he's so fucking stupid that they can do whatever they want once they compliment him. Once they get in there, they can write their own check. They can fill in the numbers. Because all Trump cares about is what I tell people. He wants music to play when he walks in the room. He wants to get high, and he wants to hit on women. Right? His needs are like immediate. That's why he's hanging out at Mar-a-Lago all the time, because he feels like a god there. He gets to sit and pull up playlists on his iPad, and he walks in the room, to the buffet table, and they clap every time he walks in the room. And even when he wasn't the president, he would like hang out there, and they would call him Mr. President, and they'd clap. Imagine how fucking insecure you have to be like that. I'm going to tell you a story. Take a sip of water. When I worked on Celebrity Apprentice, I did all the finales, right, of the show, if you ever watched it. And at the end, we shot the first season at 30 Rock, and then we were downtown at Screwball. And then we went to our sort of home for that show, ended up being the Museum of Natural History. And the fake boardroom was in a Lafrac Theater. Richie Lafrac, one of his colleagues, a builder in New York, has a theater in the Museum of Natural History, and above the theater there's like a room where you can have like a party. So we would have these after parties after the shoot of the finale, right? And everybody would go in there, and that's when the Hells Angels and all these guys would come, which was sketchy as hell, right? But Trump would wait outside in the hallway before he went into the after party because he wanted to make an entrance. So he'd be there with like all these Secret Service looking dudes that this is like years ago. This is way before he was president. So he would have like security guards like with earpieces like they were Secret Service guys, and they would like sort of walk in the room and part the ways like he was, a president or something. And I remember watching him wait out in the hallway, and I was like, this is the most pathetic thing in the world, because like he would have somebody check the room to make sure everybody was in there. And this is Celebrity Apprentice after party, okay? So like the celebrities are like Tom Green and Dennis Rodman and like Jesse James, like poker players, and like, it's like Beyonce's not in there. This is not an A-list kind of thing. This is like what you'd expect it to be. So I'm like, who are you even trying to impress is my point. But he needed that validation so bad. It's like, your name is on the show. Your name is on half the buildings in this city already, You just were live on MSNBC, and you still need this bump? Your ego is so fucking fragile that you still need, Joan Rivers to turn and look at you when you walk into a room? In a museum at a freaking after party that everybody's just going up there to get a free drink and a pigs in a blanket and go get in their car and head home after watching your stupid game show? Pick a winner? But that's how it was. That was some insight into his personality. That's what he's like. His needs are immediate. He can't pay attention to anything beyond himself. You saw that at the funeral, right? You saw he couldn't pay attention. He couldn't be moved. He didn't understand a man of character. A man who wanted to make the planet a better place, who had a vision, who had a deep faith, to try and leave this world a better place than he found it. I got to meet Jimmy Carter a few times. CSN, Crosby, Stills and Nash, they were very close with him, and I spent a lot of time with Stephen Stills. He was my assignment for many of those years. We lived on a tour bus together, and I hope Stephen and his family. Stephen just had a birthday last week. He just turned 80, old man. But I sent him some love. I love him. He's in Mulholland. He's not far from where these fires are. If they change direction, like everyone's under threat. But he had a business manager, had worked in the Carter administration, and Chip Carter would come to our shows, and Graham knew Jimmy pretty well, and Graham told me a story once. He went into the Oval Office with his road manager at the time, and the road manager, Graham said, went over to the window, lit a joint, and took a hit and blew it out the window in the Oval Office, I don't know if that's a true story. It's a cool story, though. But anyway, Carter was a great guy. And the last time I saw Jimmy Carter was with Graham Nash, and we were out in Austin, Texas at the LBJ Museum. They have a sort of civil rights summit out there every year, and Bill Clinton was out there, and Mavis Staples and Jimmy Carter. I was out in the hallway tuning up Graham's guitar. It was just me and him. He was performing, singing Teach Your Children. And we're standing out there getting ready for him to go on, and who comes by but Jimmy Carter? And they just greet each other like old friends, and I'm like in awe. He's one of my heroes, you know? So it's just the three of us, and he finally turns to me, and he's just like, hey, man, how you doing? It's just like Jimmy Carter, you know? But the first time I met him, it was the Goodwill Games, and it was the 90s in New York. And I was assigned to him, and I remember I went to meet him, or, you know, to get in position to meet him. And somebody, I got to stop playing. I won't be able to tell you the story. I went to go meet him, and somebody who's standing there was like, why are you standing here? And I'm like, I'm here to, you know, I'm waiting for the president. You know, I'm his escort or something. And his Secret Service guy popped out and was like, wait, what are you? I said, I'm his escort. Like, I'm not, no official capacity. I'm just from the show. I've been assigned to bring him to stage. And the guy's like, okay, cool. And I remember his Secret Service was like this little dude who had almost like a lazy eye and stuff. And he wasn't much bigger than me. And he had that demeanor like he could have like killed you 1,000 different ways. You know, like me and my buddy were standing there. We're like, man, if we had given the wrong answer, did you get the sense that guy would have just like put you in some kind of crazy little chokehold? But he was like chill. He was like who you would pick to be Jimmy Carter's Secret Service guy. And speaking of that, the Secret Service SUVs that sat outside of the ranch house that he lived, the modest ranch house that he lived in with Rosalind, cost more than the house itself. You know, because they're specially outfitted and bulletproof and probably have all kinds of like capabilities. But think about that. You know, so they're not your average SUVs, but whatever their price is, $250,000 each or something, they cost more than the home that this guy lived in, you know. Says everything about the man, you know. So anyway, I go to meet him, or he comes, you know, and I meet him, and at this point Giuliani's on stage and Pataki and all this, and this is after Giuliani had cursed me out on that particular gig and stuff. And you know, so he comes, I get to meet him, I shake his hand, and I start, this is down on Battery Park. Wintergreen is where we did it. This way before 9/11. A lot of this stuff got destroyed, but we're walking through this kind of grassy area, and there's like a little parking lot backstage. And this little girl comes up to him, like a girl who went to school somewhere in the city who'd won, you know, some award to be there. It was kind of part of the gig. And she came up to him and she was like, you know, hey, Mr. Carter, I just wanted to meet you. My name is blah, blah, blah. And he got down to her level and he talked to her like she was the only person in the world. Like everything stopped. And he was so thrilled to meet this young girl. And he was asking her what her favorite classes were, you know, her subjects and what she liked learning about and what sports she was into. And just everything else in the world faded away. And I remember thinking, like, this guy's president of the United States, and he's got more patience with this child, this stranger, a guy who's been president, who's been famous, you know, this is the 90s, you know, he's a world leader, you know, like he's met a lot of people at this point, but he was still acting like it was the first time he had an opportunity to, you know, affect somebody's life in a positive way. And he put all of his presence, all of his being into that. And they were calling me in my little headset, and they're like, where is he? And I'm like, oh, we're stopped for a minute. And they're like, come on, we're live. You know, that's how they do. Like, my job is like, I'm the guy who's like bringing you there, but in your ears, if you're ever on one of those shows, the directors and the stage managers are just freaking out because they're blind to whatever's going on. They're on the side of the stage and looking at a clock and being like, that dude better be here when the camera, you know, when the light turns red. So it was just a lesson in who this guy was. You know, nothing else mattered, and certainly the other dignitaries on stage didn't matter. You know, there was no VIP with that guy, you know. He was in it for the right reasons. There's so little of that these days. And in many ways, his funeral to me felt like the end of an era. It felt like it was the end of an era. You know, we're sort of burying that attitude, the idea that we can make a difference, that we can sort of realign our purpose to serve the planet and the people on it in the best possible way. We can use our technology and our intellect to help mankind, to benefit mankind. All of this climate change is awful. It's a disaster, but it also is an opportunity to change, right? Because if we don't change, we get more of the same. And we've seen what that looks like. And it's heating up, and, the storms are getting bigger and at such a point, and like, we're going to get wiped out. Like, the humans don't have the capacity for this much suffering, right? So it'd be much easier if we aligned ourselves to trying to do something about it, right? We're going to rebuild this, and we're going to re-engineer this situation, and we're really going to, use renewable energy in a positive way. We're not going to backslide into drill baby drill. Incredibly complex stuff. Nobody's saying it isn't, but you can't, distill it down to just we don't drill enough. That's the problem. No, that's not the problem. The problem is we're drilling too much. Fracking is not the solution. We have to find a solution, and we need all hands on deck for that. That's the challenge, right? And we have to make it a challenge that appeals to our humanity in a way that we can get creative about solving climate change. Imagine if everybody was like going out of their way to conserve and use less fuel. Like I'm pretty crazy about that stuff. Like I got a lot of lights on right now because I'm doing this podcast, but if you live with me, there's not a lot of lights left on, and the heat's not cranked and stuff. And if I got a tea bag, I'm squeezing it out before I throw it in the trash, because I don't want that extra weight in the trash when the dump truck has to haul it away. And I know that sounds crazy, right? But it's like a personal challenge. I want to use as little as possible. I don't want to keep using single-use plastics all the time. When I buy shampoo, I use such a little bit. I get it down to as much, and obviously I have beautiful hair. So I need to treat it right. But I try not to waste things, and especially single-use plastics. This is making me think of LA so much, and Santa Monica and stuff, because when I worked for Jackson Browne, I was his tour manager. And the first tour I did with him in the U.S., it fell to me. I was the road manager, rather, and we had a tour manager. But it fell to me on this particular tour to not use single-use plastics in our after-show food. And if you don't tour, you probably don't know what that is. But when you're on a concert tour, you're eating at the venue and you have catering, and then, it's self-explanatory. You have after-show food where everybody gets a bunch of food on the tour buses. And, you can have 3, 4, 5 tour buses on a kind of tour of this size. You can have 70 tour buses if you're Taylor Swift. But, this is classic rock, playing theaters. So we'd have 3 or 4 tour buses, but that adds up when you're getting to-go food. That's a lot of, plastic styrofoam containers for barbecue and all this, right? So Jackson's lady bought us all these recycling camping kits, and we had one assigned to each member of the production crew and everything. And it was my job to get after show food that wouldn't come in these single-use plastics, to have it put into these other containers and serve everybody. And then I would have to go collect them and wash them in my hotel room, in the bathtub and stuff. So it didn't really logistically work, and it was a hell of a challenge, but it made me conscious of we got to do better, because touring uses a lot of fuel. I would be on tours with other bands, and we'd be in Florida somewhere, worse, like Las Vegas, and they leave the bus running. The diesel generator engine stays on in the bus in some parking lot where it's 100 degrees anyway, just so the fridge stays cold and the AC stays on in the bus. There's all these little things that are just incredibly wasteful. So it felt good to not just turn a blind eye to that kind of overconsumption, but to try and be a part of the solution. And know that the answers weren't easy, right? That was not a really functional way to do after show food. We ended up scrapping that idea, but I tried to make it work. It was a challenge. And my point is, we have to shift our thinking and our consciousness. So we're all trying to do that. We're all trying to come up with ways to do better, to lessen the burden on this planet, from our habits and from our reliance on fossil fuels and plastics. And when we when we can like view it in a creative, challenging way where it becomes like a competition between us to see who can like come up with an easier, better way to do this, that uses less fuel, I feel like we could spark the kind of revolution we need, because I feel like people would get into it instead of going the opposite, where it doesn't matter and it's all just a bunch of woke bullshit and climate change is a hoax. So fill up your Ford F-250 and just, use it like there's no tomorrow and crank your AC to 65. And no, we got to stop all that, because we have to value it more. The fuel we do have left, we have to think like, what do we need this for really? Like, we can't waste this, and there's going to be situations where, elderly people and disabled people are going to have a much harder time in this transition and in all this climate like catastrophes that are happening. So we have to figure out a way to protect the vulnerable, right? And conserve our resources to use them where they're most effective, knowing how the true cost of them, right? Because the cost of a price a gallon isn't just the $3 you're paying at the pump. It's the house in the Palisades, and it's the town in North Carolina, and it's Seville, in Spain, and it's all these other places. Every time you turn on the news, somebody else is having a disaster. So it's going to happen to everybody, and we're using more than our fair share. So we should do more than our fair share to solve the problem. And we have to rise to that challenge. Americans can do that. We can come together because we are a melting pot. That's why you don't turn your back on immigration, right? Because somebody coming across the border could be the one who figures this stuff out. You help people. You make sure they're okay. You help them into your society. You don't make them live in the shadows. You certainly don't deport them and attack them. And I won't get into all that stuff now. Whatever's coming next after the inauguration, I'll save that for next time. But think of that in the same context you think of all this misinformation. This is about protecting the oil companies, right? Because they don't want solutions. They don't want the situation to get better. They want the idiot who's going to say, drill, baby, drill. And we want humanity. We want the best of us and our talent to rise to the occasion and say enough is enough. We can turn this thing around. Imagine if we can start measuring like actual progress. Because the earth is never going to get cooler than it is now, right? Like, it's only going to get hotter. It's not going back to normal. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like, this is the new normal. The question is, how bad do we let this get? And how do we keep, we can't keep going on with business as usual, but we can't really change it until we can change people's mentality. And when you have this kind of, onslaught of misinformation and Joe Rogans and podcasters and people who don't know what the F they're talking about, trying to build their brands and just make a buck off of human suffering, it's too much, But when you can sort of connect to something bigger and feel a part of a community and feel like we can do this together, we can rise to the occasion, then you can make a difference. Then you have purpose. Then you have meaning, right? Like back to Carlos. My life and your life matters. The universe has meaning. This matters. We have to honor the suffering that all these people have gone through, right? We have to honor our ancestors who lived in better harmony with this world. We wiped out the indigenous people in this country, or too many of them, that we need their wisdom now. We need to learn how to adapt, because everything's out there that we need. Like, nature is your friend. It's not your enemy. It's not something to be conquered and fracked and destroyed. You don't dredge the floor of the ocean for energy, or to scoop up a little fish. And I'll stop now, but the way he was going after the smelt and the fish, that mentality, that's everything I hate about Republicans and conservatism. It was like the spotted owl when I was a kid in high school. But this man, they want to do that just to save this stupid thing. It's going to cost jobs. Who are you to say that fish doesn't have as much purpose on this planet as you do? You're supposed to be so religious. You're supposed to be such Christians, right? You think God was just making things that didn't matter for the hell of it? And he just made you and you're just this perfect specimen? Donald Trump is not a perfect specimen. You know what I mean? Dude can't read. That smelt wasn't hurting anybody. And there's a reason, you know, we protect the environment because nothing is insignificant. You think bumblebees are insignificant? We're losing them. We're not going to have fertilized crops. Everything's going to be genetic. It's going to be, you know, Monsanto dumping a bunch of chemicals on soil or it won't grow. It's already basically like that. That's not the natural way. And we don't need that because everything we need is already here on this planet. We have to start reclaiming it. You know, we have to tune into it. And we have to help each other find that. And the easiest way to begin to do that is to counter the bullshit, is to understand why they're telling you this shit, what they really want, what the end game is of a Jeff Bezos. One of the worst situations to ever hit the environment was Amazon, and people don't even think about it. Well, you should think about it. You shouldn't just go on there and order a dongle every time you lose one online. Go to the store and get it if it's already been shipped to you. You know, that one click is filling the planet up with crap. You know? And they don't care. They want to just keep doing it. It's unsustainable, that business model, and they don't want you finding that out. They want to get a corrupt guy in there like Trump that'll let them do whatever they want as long as he gets a piece, you know? And we got to stand up to that. We got to get back to basics, man. Back to humanity. That's what matters. People, animal, your pets, you know? Music, art. So anyway, and a lot of the artists are hurting, man. There's a lot of creative people who have brought a lot of pleasure to my life that are just absolutely bumming right now, you know? And I'm very sorry for you all. My heart goes out to you, and I'll shut up. Thanks everybody who's listening. This was like a live stream. I don't think I've ever done a lot. I mean, I guess I've done a lot of them when I was on other people's stuff, but usually I just do the podcast and put it out. So thanks for indulging me. I have a bunch of stuff on Noel's Notes. I know I haven't been podcasting in a while, but I put Noel's Notes out every Sunday, and I put one out during the week usually too. So you should sign up for that on Substack, and, you know, take care of yourselves. It's a lot. It's been a lot this January. I'm heading off to Miami tomorrow. I'll come back soon and talk to you guys, all right? I'm sure I'm forgetting to say something, but I guess I'll just wish you peace. See you soon. That was a clam note. I think about all the instruments that have been lost in the last week, and it breaks my heart. I know some people have a lot of guitars that, I mean, it's just fucking unbelievable. Sorry for everything that everybody's going through, you know. We're going to get through this. We're going to get over this, you know. We're going to keep a clear-eyed vision on what these guys have in store for us. We're not going to let them get away with it, you know. They're getting away with it now, but we're going to win the war, all right? Thanks. That's enough out of me. Peace. I'll see you guys later, all right? Love you. Bye.